Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, and today I'm joined by Charlie for our spoiler-free review of. Do we have to call it 2021's Dune, or
No, we
so
can just
people
call
don't get
it
confused?
Dune.
Dune Part One, however people want this one to be titled. Um, it's been a long time coming, so I'm excited to get into this one. But as always, Charlie, it's lovely to get you back on the channel, and I know that
Thanks,
this
good
is
to be back.
the film for many years I know you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
So obviously we know we had to get you on for this one. As we said, it's spoiler free. There will be another one, people, on release week or when it's come out. It will be a spoiler one. We'll be able to. It won't be like Bond. It won't be 4 hours. Don't get me wrong. But we'll be able to talk about big moments from it, from the book, things that may have been in it, things that are in it. So that's going to be a very fun discussion when we get there. But in the meantime, of course, this is a spoiler free part one review. So we normally kick these off talking about the hype heading in, and it is only polite that I hand over to you for your background with the book, various people you've met as well. I'm just gonna give you the floor.
Okay, well, I'm not going to sit here and just list all the cast members that I've met before because that's just a bit embarrassing. Um, I don't even know where to start. So I first read Dune. I think I worked out that I started reading it in 2018 when I knew this film was coming. Huge Timothée Chalamet fan, huge Denis Villeneuve fan. So I was like, okay, I've got to get on board with this. It took me best part of 8 months to get through to get through the book because it's 600 pages of a lot of words, a lot of description, a lot of politics, and a lot of world building. But I just fell in love with it instantly. It just felt for me like the birth of sci-fi, and sci-fi is very close to my heart. So I've really really loved it. So yeah, from then really the hype has been building for the last, what's that, like three years now. So when they finally announced the official release date, not the two or three that got delayed, I was just so ready. And we got to see it early, so yeah, it was very exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing as well, that you were at the BFI screening with Neil as well, which sounded like fun, which I was meant to be at. And I dropped you a very polite message, and
Ditched
then
us.
yeah, I got a very fortunate email when I was at the when I was away last week. Got an RSVP to see it at the Cineworld IMAX Leicester Square, and you know me, I love
you
IMAX, and I
can't you
think
can't resist an IMAX, can you?
yeah, especially when I've already got the train booked there and back, and it was the exact same time. I was like, "This has just
Yeah,
worked out so well." So
yeah.
Theo came with me as well, who obviously is with us on the channel quite a bit at the festival too at the moment, which we'll get to later on. But now heading into this, I knew next to nothing about Dune. I'd heard of the book. My
Because of
granddad
me,
mentioned it to
probably.
me because of you in passing. I didn't take an active awareness. I would say to maybe not even like after filming, probably was a viewing abstract. I remember you got your book signed, and I think
Yeah.
that's when I realized that there's something else going on here. And I bought the book. I want to say August 20, whenever the trailer came out last year.
Yeah,
I
it was
bought a
some end of summer last year, I think.
Yeah, I bought the book from Waterstones that day, and I was like, I'm gonna start reading this in like October because that gave me like a 2 month window. And I was like, because the last thing I want to do is read it and the film gets delayed, which obviously it did happen. So I read this. Well, I'm technically quotation still reading this at the time of recording. You've been pushing me to read it, which is absolutely fair. And I always said, I'll start it in August time for it to come out in October. And obviously, we got early access 17 days before the release date. And suddenly, my adventure of being 30 pages into a 600-page book had a bit more urgency. So, what I'm going to say, which isn't a spoiler, for people at home that read the book, I got to 20 pages after where part one finishes, and that was on the train there reading it on Tuesday. So
Yeah.
I got very lucky about where I
Yeah.
ended up with this. But the big thing for me is as a fan of sci-fi that's not read the book, obviously I'm very familiar. I've grown up with Star Wars. A lot of comparisons online they always say is that Dune is Star Wars for adults, or like Dune,
Mhm.
you said the father of science fiction. There is so much about this which I didn't know about. There are board games which have been on for years. There's so many more books in the franchise, which thanks to you, I've got the second one to start reading in the next couple of weeks as well. And reading it's been a lot of fun because I kind of went into this approach, and this isn't really about the film. This is the last thing I'll say in the book is that it didn't feel like Star Wars. Yes, it's sci-fi, but it's so political. I actually came out of it. I know you've not seen it. It felt more like Game of Thrones. So,
Yeah.
oh, there's different houses here. There's politics in play. There's action, and obviously the biggest draw for me personally, aside from Denis Villeneuve, was Hans Zimmer, which we'll get to properly in a bit. But I think this has been a film that has been hyped up for so long, and I did
Yeah.
wonder, like, is it? I sort of fatally said before the film started, is it going to be as good as we want? Like, because the heights this film's had, the expectation is higher than 90% of the films I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
And I said it to Theo before we started, and I came out of that just completely blown away as a positive. And I think that's where we have to start with the main man that's put this film together, which is Denis Villeneuve. And I've not seen all of his films yet. I've not even seen all of his 2010s film yet, which everyone says are the best. I think I just need to see Enemy now. But obviously, we watched Arrival last Saturday, which I
Yeah.
was very grateful for the invite, which I hadn't seen before. And everything I've seen in Blade Runner 2049, I absolutely love Prisoners. I think that and Blade Runner for me are his two best films.
Hmm.
I just sort of, after watching Arrival, that's when I thought this guy just gets sci-fi. Like he knows what
Yeah.
he's, and even sci-fi is a bit of an understatement. Like, he's just a very good filmmaker. But when you take an unfilmable book, which they always say, I've seen Denis Villeneuve. Okay, I don't see anyone else doing this anymore. And I think heading into it, I think he is the key for all of this, getting the cast in, getting the composer in. I think it starts and ends with Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of him taking on a project like this is that it just oozes his passion. Like he clearly loves the book. I saw a Q&A with him, and he said that, he even loved the original film, which I know we're not going to talk much about, but he grew up in this world of science fiction, and Dune to him is that encouragement and is that passion, and I think he was just the perfect choice to put this to screen. And yeah, it has been called unfilmable. It has been said many times it wouldn't resonate well in cinema, and I mean, he's proved everyone wrong completely. He's managed to create a world that exists in the pages of the book, but that now people who haven't read it or who aren't interested in reading it can now experience these stories. And I think I honestly can't think of anyone who could have done a better job.
No, exactly. And I think that was my big thing coming out of the cinema. I felt like not that the world existed, but when you go back to the original Star Wars, which you can tell how heavily Star Wars was influenced by Dune all those years ago.
Massively,
You know,
yeah.
yeah, and Star Wars was, that's a lived in world, which was the expression they always used in the last few years, that it was lived in. And with Dune, you start off on these, planets elsewhere, thousands of years in the future, and they all feel like they are different planets, real planets.
Mm,
The locations have been lived in their sort of ancestry and all of this. And I think the really big thing, so obviously we can't talk about sort of specifics within the film, but the world building this has done, I cannot see any film that's ever done this better than arguably Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. Obviously,
yeah.
Lord of the Rings has been thrown up a lot over the last years with this film, that you have, an auteur coming in to direct it. Lord of the Rings is that fantasy book, whereas Dune is that sci-fi book, and there's so many comparisons. But this was filmed in what the deserts of, was it Jordan
Jordan.
or
Yeah,
yeah, and
Jordan.
they've gone to this place, there's something hungry, and you can tell they're on location. It's not a studio, and there's nothing wrong with the studios, but when you know that they've somehow shot this on Earth, that just gives you these extra elements. And the one really big take I had was when we were watching Arrival, the fact that you had this world which was just Earth, it was fine, and you had all these sets, but then he would bring in these sort of alien spaceships, but it just looked so naturally there. It didn't
Mm,
feel like here's a CGI blob or a model blob or something that's so obviously fake. Everything about Arrival looked real, and I think that's what's really hit me with Dune. That when they would go to these planets, you would see these ships in motion, and at no point did it ever feel like it wasn't already there. I
yeah.
guess it's a credit to the CGI. There were models made as well, but his direction with this was, I'm like a bit of a no. I'm going to get everything I can in camera, and then I'm going to be able to add in these other elements. And I think that is what makes this film so perfect, is that the worlds he goes to are there. And I remember that first photo they released of Timothée Chalamet a couple of years ago, when it was just him walking in the black sort of Matrix coat, I always call it. And I just looked and I thought, that's Star Wars. And when you get to that scene, it's just so exciting. And even with this one, there are moments when it just takes 20-30 seconds just to follow an object, or it's almost like a transition, and you're just curious about the sort of the cogs of the world. And I don't think that's an easy task for any director to do, let alone to one with such famous source material.
Yeah.
I think sort of as a jumping in point, it's such a faithful adaptation of where I'm at. So obviously there might be stuff it covered past it, which I'm going to find out. I've got about 80 pages left now, but it was one of those where I don't see any other director being able to do this. That even me, who's like a Nolan fanboy, I couldn't see Nolan doing something like this. But there's something about Denis Villeneuve, and whether I'm gonna, we'll talk about the Oscars at the end, but personally, I think he is the best working director in Hollywood today. I think a lot of people have said that over the last few years, and
Yeah.
you just look at that streak from, did he do Prisoners, Enemy,
Yeah.
Arrival, Blade
Blade
Runner?
Runner.
Um, it was one a year. It wasn't every 3 years he'd drop film. It was every year, and then there's the gap to Dune. And I think that's what made it more exciting. Is that I was doing a bit of research, and he said that he didn't want he first signed in 2016 for this, but he
Hmm.
wanted to complete Arrival and Blade Runner because he said he wanted to, before he attempted Dune, he wanted to have done some sci-fi already. And I think that's
Yeah.
also such a rarity these days. Ironically, given that he wanted to use Blade Runner as a test for Dune, which was probably sacrilege for some, but Blade Runner is outstanding.
I mean, I think some people might disagree, but I think Arrival and Dune gave him the opportunity to look at sci-fi on an earthly level with Arrival, but then Blade Runner was that crazy, like super science fictiony kind of film, and he had the opportunity to kind of use the things that he learned from both of those films to put Dune together. And I think he it's almost like he had to do these two projects first to find the equilibrium between the two to give us this. It's an epic film. It's
Yeah.
just on another scale, and he managed to combine, like you say, a film that is shot on Earth. It's not shot in front of a green screen. It is sets and props and physical effects, and he's managed to put that on a screen that will make people think that that's not where it was filmed, because he's built this incredible world around these beautiful shoots. And I think it's fair to compare it to Lord of the Rings, because Peter Jackson did a very similar thing with the first three. And obviously that's fantasy versus sci-fi, but it's got that same feel to it. This epic proportional film full of reality based on pure fiction.
Yeah, and I think as well, sort of with that, the film can't work without its characters as a lovely segue. We'll
Yeah.
get more into a Villeneuve when we get to music, because I think that's going to be the really interesting part. But we'll kick off. We're not going to go through everyone individually, so this is spoiler free, so people might have heard of them. Fans of the
It's a
book, I'm
big
sure you want
cast.
our initial opinions. Yeah, it's a ensemble is a term that's thrown around so much these
Yeah.
days, and you know in theory, any film has an ensemble when you've actually got 8 title people, but this is an old school ensemble. There are key players, there are big name
Hmm.
actors in smaller roles, in larger roles, and these aren't your bog standard actors as well.
Hmm.
These are like very, very good actors being brought
Yeah.
in for parts, and I
And they're
think
not
the
not
icon.
just not the actors that haven't just been cast for their names either. They've been cast
Yes,
because he believed that they were right for the
for
parts
the
that they were
character, and
given.
that's a big thing heading in, that I thought the casting was on point. Jason Momoa is probably the clear standout of,
Yeah.
oh look, it's all over the trailers, the posters, marketing. Oh, it's Jason Momoa being Jason Momoa. I was like, well, when I was reading, because I'm fortunate, when I read the book, I'd seen trailers, so I was like, okay, I know that Duncan is Jason Momoa, and when I'm reading the book, I'm like, I can't see anybody else playing this character. And I felt like that so many times when I was reading the book, that I don't believe anyone else could have played those roles. And
Yeah.
we'll kick off with, I guess, the big one. Paul Atreides, played
This
by
guy.
Timothee Chalamet, the first person cast in this. So Timothée Chalamet is a very interesting. I really enjoy him as an actor. I've not seen all of his work. I've seen a fair few of it, but obviously the one thing that anyone knows is this kid has hype from his fans, from the industry, to acclaim. I think he's always, I'm not going to compare him to Leonardo DiCaprio, but he is that young actor that everybody knows that, he is going to be around for 10, 20 years at the absolute top of his game.
Yeah.
We know he's just been cast in Wonka, which is a very curious conversation piece for another time. But this is, I think for me, the big jump was seeing him as not a leading man, but in a blockbuster epic. It's like,
Yeah.
it seems like he's not a Tom Holland. And
Mhm.
I'm not sort of dissing on Tom Holland, but Tom Holland has become the go-to young actor, which is fine
Yeah.
sometimes. But like for example, Uncharted for next year, completely miscast, but they wanted the young lead that everyone will go and watch. And I think Timothée Chalamet is incredible as Paul, very traditional hero journey type character. But as far as an entry point goes, I think he serves the character well from the book. But his performance and his interactions with the cast, I think, leave you not wanting more because he's fine at. But as a guy that I don't think this has become a big franchise. This will be a discussion for another time. But I see this as the chosen one, which essentially is a concept from the book. That Timothée Chalamet is the lead, the Luke Skywalker for this franchise, and I believe him in that, which is the thing
Mm.
I didn't feel going. I was like, can Timothy pull this off? And he absolutely did.
Yeah. Denny said in the Q&A that we watched that he wouldn't have made the film if Timothy hadn't been available for it. He said there was no plan B with who was going to play Paul. He said I mean, not to say that he wrote, because obviously Denny adapted the book for screen, and he didn't have Timothy in mind whilst he was putting pen to paper, but once it came around to casting, he was like, that's who it's got to be. And I'm glad he stuck with his guns, because it's funny with Timothée Chalamet, because he's a huge name to people who know film and to people who know the industry, but actually he's an independent actor. He's done a lot of very small films. And so if you say to someone, do you like Timothée Chalamet? And they're like, oh, what's he been in? Actually, there aren't that many big films that you can list off for him. Like Call Me By Your Name is probably his biggest one to date. And again, it's an art house film. So if you've not seen it or heard, if you're not in the know, you're not necessarily going to have heard of it. And I think this film is going to put him on the map for people who don't know those smaller films that he's been in. And I mean, I'm so biased because I am such a huge fan of his, but I am so glad that it's him in this film. I think he really is just the strength behind this enormous cast and this very complex story. He's the constant, and I think he's perfect in this role.
Yeah, and that's a really good point as well, because I always think of films. All I can ever think of is Interstellar, and that was a shock when I discovered he was in Interstellar, because the kid that was in it for 2 minutes at the start,
Yeah,
that's gone to be the biggest name from it. And I think what's interesting with him is that his character is complex, and he's. I sort of made a Luke Skywalker comparison earlier. He's a sort of a chosen one hero, Stanley art character, but his journey isn't of that, and that's as much as I can say. In that there is a lot of depth to the character, and one big thing jumping from the book to the film is that so much of the book is internal thoughts, that it's not point of view chapters, but you'll get a couple lines of dialogue and then you'll get like an italic, and it's here's their internal thinking. And translating that to the big screen is so hard for probably any film in truth. But this film, they nailed it with Paul more so than any other character. And it's the one you have to do. You start with your
yeah,
protagonist. And I know you're a massive Harry Potter fan, but I know that obviously as an actual fan of Harry more so than the rest of them. And so many times there's people that the Harry Potter's the lamest character, or pre
poor
Disney they would
Harry.
say about and pre Disney they'd say Luke Skywalker and stuff like that. And there was always you wanted to be the Harrison Ford of that, and there was
Yeah,
always that conversation. And I think with this, there are cooler characters than Paul, but Paul is the entry point. He's the teenager
yeah,
in a film that's kind of, I would say, mainly a film about men, which is a beautiful segue into Rebecca Ferguson playing the character of Lady Jessica.
yeah.
You texted this after as well. She should get nominated for supporting actress. She is phenomenal in this film. And
She
again,
is.
casting done perfect. She is, I don't want to say the word fierce, but I'm trying to think of a better term for it. That, again, another complex character that translates on screen. Just her physical performance, let alone when she has lines, is amazing. And she just has natural chemistry with everybody she interacts with, whether it's I almost said Oscar. It is Oscar Isaac. It's Duke Leto. Whether it's Timothée Chalamet, she's amazing in this film. And I know that Denis Villeneuve said one of the big things he wanted to do was significantly improve the female characters from the book, and he's able to do that without really changing much about Lady Jessica. But he makes her, I feel, more intrinsical to the story as a sort of segue point. But she's already important, but she isn't a typical housewife. Could you say that?
Yeah.
Like she does feel like at times in the book.
I mean, they're not even married.
Yeah,
She's not even his wife. She's just the baby bearer of the House Atreides, you know, and she's a hugely complex character, and she has such relevance in the book. And I hope I mean, she was phenomenal, but I hope they delve deeper into her character as the films go on. But I'm not a Rebecca Ferguson fan until I saw this film. I now am a self-acclaimed Rebecca Ferguson fan because she's never done anything that's really wowed me up until this point. But I mean, her as Lady Jessica was just something else. Like I just the casting of this film was just perfect, and she has so much gumption and so much edge, and the emotional turmoil that Jessica is constantly going through is so clearly performed, and I just think she absolutely nailed it. And yeah, I agree, she needs a nomination for this film, and I hope that this film does pick up some nominations. I don't know if it's likely to win much, but I hope one of the nominations that it gets does go to her. I think she deserves it.
yeah, absolutely. And we're not going to go through every character sort of one by one because you'd be here all night.
There's
But
too many.
yeah, I wanted to give a massive shout out to Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto again. A very complex in book character that translates on screen. I'll never forget the first. I think this is what maybe attracted me to the project more than anything was that photo of Oscar Isaac in the still seat with the beard when he was turning looking at the camera. And I'll never forget John Boyega's comment on Instagram when he put, "Wow, why didn't we get this in Star Wars?" And there's a joking line in this film where he says, he wanted to be a pilot growing up, and
Yeah.
I laughed out loud, and I don't know if anyone else
Yeah, a
was
lot
in
of people
with me in
did.
that. That's a very very on the nose piece, but he's amazing. And the thing is with Oscar Isaac, we know he's a fantastic actor, and when he has the material to work with, he is fantastic, and he does give it his all. So I absolutely love him. And of course, we spoke about Momoa as Duncan Idaho, and I'm almost introducing him as Thanos then. Of course, playing Gurney, we have Josh Brolin, who's obviously worked with Denis Villeneuve before, but again, you just think of these. You see it in the trailer, Gurney smiles. Like, I am smiling, and it's so hard
Yeah,
not to hear Thanos. But if you want someone to play a toughed up military-esque person, he's one
you
of
asked
the
Josh
go-to
Brolin.
guys of Hollywood. Yeah, and
Yeah,
if you're looking for something similar for that, who's got a bit of charisma, who can fight and has action and is going to get a wow moment, that's going to be Jason Momoa's Duncan. I've
yeah,
not seen Aquaman, and I won't on principle, based off obviously who else is in that film and going to be in the new one. But I really loved him in Game of Thrones, and seeing him as Duncan in this, he was superb because when you read that book, he is one of by far the most interesting characters that just. I'm not saying he's underwritten the book, but with Momoa, they get to flesh him out a bit more. And
yeah,
I think that's what the character needed. And again, I sit there thinking, who else could have played this role? And the answer is no one. That what's really sort of sold me, sort of as a summary. I mean, we've got a couple more to talk about, but this cast, I feel like they are aware of the legacy of the book. And I think when Denis Villeneuve's asking them to be in a film, and it's not just any film, it's an adaptation of Dune that's going to be done faithfully. Personally, I don't see why any of them would have ever said no, and it doesn't seem like anybody did because that cast feel like I want all of this people in, and every single person said yes. Just
mm.
as a really sort of basic point, I don't know if you're the same with that.
Yeah. And I think it's probably a case of they heard about other people that had been asked and had signed up, and they were like, "Yeah, of course I want to do this film." If you hear that Oscar Isaac and Josh Brolin and Jason Momoa and Javier Bardem and all these big names have signed up, why would you ever say no? Do you know what I mean? It was bound to be a huge, huge film right from the start. And I think it was nice because some of the characters got given things to do that we haven't really seen from them. Jason Momoa was playing this really like comforting, heartfelt older brother figure to Paul, whereas in things we've seen him in before, he's this great big angry like massive presence, and it was nice to see him do something a little bit different. And I think the same for to sort of jump over to the other house, for Stellan Skarsgård to be cast as the villain in this was just
Yeah.
genius casting. Because what an actor! I mean, and it's so nice to see him not playing the kind of bumbly characters that he often plays, but playing this really awful character, but doing it with giving the character such justice. Like, he did such a good job.
Yeah, and that's really good. So, because obviously the Baron's the villain who he plays, and I remember the trailer. I was like, is that meant to be Stellan Skarsgård? Like, he's in
Yeah,
a lot of makeup, and how many films these days would have made that a motion capture character or made him a CGI being or a
yeah,
big puppet thing? And it's like Skarsgård sat in the makeup every day. I can't wait to see behind the scenes of it, and
oh
he's
yeah,
quite terrifying. And I don't want to say they've changed him from the book, but in the book, he's such a caricatural villain, which is fine for a book. But again, he is one of those characters that has the internal monologuing that's more interesting than what he says,
yeah.
because you're
And
always reading his thoughts.
Jabba the Hutt is based on
Baron.
Baron.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they've done a really good job to not make him like Jabba the Hutt, because he is often laughed at. He is a character of a villain, whereas what they've done in this film is they've made him really
Terrifying.
threatening. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing. And I always have to give a shout out to Big Dave Batista.
Yeah. Your
Playing
babe.
Beast Raban. It's so weird to call him character names because I just keep saying Big Dave. But
Yeah.
again, he was in Blade Runner 2049, and he's such an amazing. I mean, me and Chris spoke for ages in the Spectre video about how much we love him, but Blade Runner, he said, is the film that's changed his life. He said after Blade Runner, that's when the directors were calling and asking for more than an action hero. I know he
Yeah.
does do action well, but I'm gonna say he doesn't
He's
get a
being
lot to do in
taken
this film.
seriously.
Yeah, he's got a couple of scenes in this, and he has a presence, and he's being
Yeah.
allowed to act. He's not just there because he's big and intimidating. Ironically, we don't really get any action from him, and I
No.
think he's a character that will carry over for part two potentially. And I think that's going to
Who
be a really
knows?
big thing with him. Well, that's it because I haven't finished the book yet, but he is one of them where he's not in it as much. But if you've got Batista in your film, put him in there, and I
Mm,
think that's a really important point that Baron is the villain, and it's the set design. It's like you're uncomfortable watching him, and that's what they want. They want you to be uncomfortable looking at some of these characters, and Batista and Skarsgård were great, and I do think we're going to get not necessarily more from them both. That's unfair, but we get the scenes they have in the book. They essentially shorten for the film, and I don't think that's a
mhm.
spoiler to say that, which makes them as villains more interesting because you're not again reading their thoughts out loud. You don't know how they're going to proceed, what their plan is. So I think that's quite exciting to see what could come with a part two. Um, and then I really want to give a shout out to Zendaya, who is obviously all over the marketing.
Yeah. For her, what, like 2.5 minutes
Five,
screen time or something?
yeah, that's something that before the film came, I was like, oh, Zendaya's going to be in it like in every single chapter, and just really even Javier Bardem, who's at the forefront now of the marketing, and
Yeah.
again, how can you get standouts? He almost steals this film for me, and he's in what two
He's
scenes, and he's so good, and
it's a game
again,
changer. Like, as soon as he's introduced, that's who you're watching just straight away. He's phenomenal.
yeah, and going back to the Bond type, I know you've not seen Skyfall yet. You look at Skyfall, and when his character is introduced, he's any scene he's in that film, he steals.
Mm.
And Javier Bardem does that in every single film he's in. Even Pirates of the Caribbean, I enjoyed Pirates 5 and like a lot of others, but he stole that film for me.
Yeah.
And he's just so good at just taking it, and you love hearing him speak, how he
Yeah.
moves, how he talks. And there's like a scene where he's like lying down on a rock, but it's just like, why is he lying like that? But you're kind of captivated by him, and I think that's a really good thing to have with the film. Is that
Yeah.
every character, every actor has been perfectly cast in their roles, and Javier Bardem's just an enigma, isn't he? He's an enigma in everything. So I absolutely loved him.
Yeah.
And sort of rounding out the cast, shall we talk about the music? I mean, we kind of have to, right?
Well, I won't, but you can.
I can
I'll
have my
let you
piece.
take this one.
Obviously, as a diehard Nolan fan, the day they announced Hans Zimmer wouldn't do the next Nolan score was a pretty, I don't say a dark day, but that was a big whoa. Hans Zimmer's not doing the new Nolan film, and I remember that was like, what's happened? Have they fell out? And it was just No, like Hans Zimmer is doing Dune, and he had to
Yeah.
pick Dune or what we know is Tenet, and I'm not going to complain because I love the Tenet score. But from day one, I had more hype leading into this film because of Hans Zimmer's score. That when I knew that he declined a Nolan film, and he said he had to decline the Nolan film. I think they both started pre-production at the same time, and both directors wanted their composer in from pre-production. Whereas obviously in the new Bond film, against my reference, he came in post-production and he did a great score. But
Mm.
Dune was the one where I've known, I think he said in interviews that back when he was doing Blade Runner, he was speaking to Denis Villeneuve about wanting to score Dune. And I think Denis Villeneuve said in one interview that Hans was convincing him to take the project as well. And the condition was that Hans Zimmer would always score it. And I think he said it's one of his favorite ever books. So coming into this film, there was a lot of expectation for me personally on the soundtrack, because he's my favorite composer. I've seen him live so many times. And I'm not saying I need to change. I was like, this is going to be different. This isn't going to be Hans doing a Star Wars soundtrack. This has got to be a new world, something we've not
Mm.
heard before. And obviously, the intro to this video, I played one of the songs, which we know is copyright free, thank God. Hans Zimmer, to me, we'll get into this in a bit. Hans Zimmer's winning the Oscar. I will absolutely write if he doesn't. What he's done to this, and I tweeted this when I came out, that he's put such an artistic stamp on the sound that I now cannot unsee Dune as a film without the music of Hans Zimmer in the worlds, in the characters, in the set pieces. He has come into this sounding never like any. He's experimenting with bagpipes, which I know a lot of people are speaking about, and we're trying to figure out it's like Mongolian music, like didgeridoos. He has approached this like no other. He's released 3 soundtracks for this film. I think 2 of the 3 are already out and available to listen to. But his score, I'm going to say on a whim, is the best I've seen for world building. Again, since John Williams of Star Wars, that you can't look at Star Wars without John Williams, and
Mm.
that's been how I felt with Dune. That just hearing what on earth, how does one man like come up with those? And it's again him combined with Denis Villeneuve makes the film. And I don't think I'm sure another composer could have come in, but it would sound like traditional sci-fi. This doesn't
Yeah.
sound traditional. This sounds like this is Arrakis, this is Caladan, this is X, Y, and Z. That he is all over this.
Yeah. And what he did with it is he made it tribal. He made it feel, it's almost biblical. Like it's got this
Yeah.
depth to it. And I mean, may as well just give him the Oscar now, let's be honest. He's not going to have no one's going to have a chance against him for this. It's passion for him as much as it is for Denny. And I think that is so clear. And also it's the first thing you hear when the film starts. It's just that roar of the music. It goes through you, like it's just phenomenal, and I love it, and I can't wait to experience it again.
It's just been listening. I mean, I've been listening to the soundtrack on loop. Obviously, we had him do Bond, we had him do this, and I said the Bond score is great, but when he said he's worked on Dune for probably a year and a half,
Mm.
he has. The fact that he made a soundtrack for people to listen to whilst reading a behind the scenes book,
Yeah, it's just
that's
crazy.
I'm convinced that's probably just like songs he just couldn't use in the film, and
Yeah.
he's just it's just as a fan, it's so nice to hear, because it's just exciting to have something new to listen to that there's nothing like it. And I was driving my car with it, and it's like it's already a great driving soundtrack. A very weird one though. If you imagine you're driving past someone, they can hear like weird like Mongolian chanting or something.
Yeah, it's got so much feeling as well. It's so dark and it feels emotional. Like the music has this, like, I don't know if that's just because of my emotional connection to Dune as a whole, but just it's so like atmospheric. And
Yeah,
I was listening to it very early in the morning yesterday, and I was like, I can't listen to this at this time of day. Like I need to appreciate it because it's just incredible.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think that's going to boil down. We'll pass on, because we're almost done. This is spoiler free. I've put a note here for the Oscars. I think it gets to Oscar season. We're covering the festival shortly, and we reach this point where every review end up saying, "Okay, is this going to get nominated for Oscars?"
Yeah.
I see this 100% getting nominated for like 12, 15, that kind of thing off the go.
Mm.
And I think it will get a lot of nominations. Now, Wind is the big one, because
Yeah.
we know this is a two-parter, and I don't want to make the Lord of the Rings comparison, but I will. the Academy like to reward people for it's a pat on the back, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
you did 2 good Middle-earth films, and the third one was good too. So you'll win all of them for that, even though Fellowship's the best of the 3 by a mile. And we don't know what's going to happen with Dune Part 2 yet, but I think this should win music. This should win visual effects. Off the top of my head, nominated for cinematography. And this is a big thing. We spoke about Roger Deakins couldn't come
I
back for
mean,
this thing. You told me he was doing 1917, and Greg Fraser came in, and it is still incredible. Some of the shots they have, the
yeah,
world building in this, and as far as award season goes, to me, this is at the moment the one I think I'm going to be sort of championing across the entire Oscar season, and I think a lot of others will, but it's whether we don't know what films it's up against yet. We don't know the quality of those films. It's October and it's not happening to March next year.
yeah.
But this is going to be the one when, and Denis Villeneuve has somehow not won Best Director before, and I can't see them doing it on Part One as much as I would love them to.
I
I
think
think
he'll get a nomination. I think,
nomination,
but yeah, we might have to wait another couple of years until he gets the win.
and that's it. And this is what I'm excited for. That even adding in this on the spot financially, this opened up in Europe. Not here, obviously, but in a lot of other places, it's performed magnificently there. It's already on, I think, over 100 million at the box
Yeah,
office. And, you know, there were rumors, questions, it's got to make X amount to break even. Is Warner Brothers going to pull the plug because they've stupidly done the HBO Max release date without getting into the politics of finances? But, Venom has opened strong in America. Shang-Chi performed strong. Bond is performing magnificent here. Films that aren't getting released online are now locked in again as making money. And there's no hiding for me personally in this review that this film is not going to bomb, but this
no,
isn't going to be a juggernaut hit. This isn't going to change the game. This is very much an absolute catastrophe for Warner Brothers, and it's at their own doing. Denis Villeneuve criticized them all year long, which has been some of my favorite interviews. Is him saying how much he hates online streaming,
it's
knowing
been
he's
quite
got to
fun to
advertise a
watch.
film. Yeah, and again, I'm very fortunate to have seen it, at the Cineworld IMAX in Leicester Square, one of the biggest cinemas in the country, but you can't hide from the scope of the film. I think
No,
I text you after saying that if you were ever going to IMAX a film, I think
it
Dune is
needs
it,
to
and
be this.
I'm gonna put it on a pedestal, and I'm gonna put that above most Nolan films at an IMAX, maybe bar Dunkirk, but this was the one where it is the advert. It is here's exploring planets everywhere you look on the frame. There is something happening, and it's such a shame people are going to be watching this at home, and it is a real tragedy that they couldn't pull the plug. But I'm convinced we'll get a part 2. I think the reviews have been too strong. I think the money it's
Yeah,
made elsewhere has proven the audience is there. So we'll know in the next couple of months. But
yeah.
I wanna hand over to you for your final thoughts on this film.
I don't even know where to start. When the film finished, I was with Neil, and he turned to me and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm not okay. I'm not sure I'm going to recover from it for a while." I just think it's everything that the book deserves. It he just made it with such passion, and it's so beautiful, and it's so in depth and encompassing, and I'm really speechless with it. I think it's phenomenal.
No, that's absolutely fair. I'm going to quickly read off a tweet that Nikolai sent in this afternoon, because I just tweeted earlier saying we're going to cover it today. He put best film of 2021 so far. The Green Knight is close behind, and I've not seen The Green Knight yet. I know you have.
Yeah,
But for me, this is also the best film I've seen this year as far as filmmaking goes. I love my Bond and stuff like that, but Dune was just an experience to witness that. And when this does get the wide release, I really hope people go. I'm excited. I'm going to be taking my dad there, who's looking forward to it. I've got friends that have all booked to go and watch it and stuff as well. So I am jumping on the IMAX bandwagon, telling them all go to the IMAX, please. Don't go
yeah,
anywhere else. Don't watch it online, because it will be online. It will get piracy like Black Widow and so many other films that have failed thanks to Warner Brothers. So personally, I think I don't jump masterpiece around a lot, but I think this is up
yeah,
there. And I also think, really unfairly said, if you know Denis Villeneuve, you know you're going to get a good film,
yeah.
and he's once
And
again
if
doing
you
what
haven't seen any of his others, just watch them. He's not that well known, but his films are
yeah,
stunning. They're all worth a watch.
definitely. And as we said, do watch this at the cinema. He is as I said, I think the best working director working right now, and I hate the term magnus opum. Everyone seems to have a fight about using it, but I think, as we said earlier, this is the one he's built towards. That everything that came before it, taking character pieces like Prisoners, the science fiction of
Mm,
Arrival, the world building of Blade Runner, combining everything, I think gives you Dune, and it's a
yeah,
faithful adaptation, which is even more important for those fans at home. So that is 100% recommend from us. As I said, we're going
yeah,
to be covering this a little bit more. There may even be a review out for 1984 Dune. We need to figure out what's happening with that. I know that Chris spoke about doing it. So any more details for that, we'll put them on our social medias, which is Facebook, Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy, letterbox.com/Cinema Savvy. But we want to hear your thoughts on Dune. If you've seen this film, please don't comment spoilers. We're not as tight as we have been with Bond. That's a bit different. But if you're a fan of the book, if you've seen this film, if you're looking forward to seeing this film, we want to know your thoughts. Hit that like button, do comment and subscribe, because there is more Dune content on the way. And I think this is going to be one we do speak about across Oscar season as one of the big favorites. But Charlie, I've got your Twitter handle here as well for people that want to find you. What are you covering at the moment, which is a big thing that's just started?
yeah. London Film Festival. Have it's going to be a busy couple of weeks. It's already been a busy couple of days, but yes, find me on Twitter. I'm basically just complaining about queue lengths at the moment, but we're getting there.
Absolutely. So, as you guys, we're all covering this. Tate's been on with me as well. By the time this video goes up, we'll be recording The Harder They Fall. So, we are covering London Film Festival on the channel again. I'm heading down tomorrow in person to get a couple more. So, we don't know when the videos are going to go up, who's going to be on the videos, when they're going to be, what they're going to be, what are our
When they're
backgrounds
going to
going to
get
be.
done.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be absolute carnage. So get us on socials. You'll get more details on there. But what I can say, the first one is The Harder They Fall. That's going to be up tomorrow evening, Friday, the 8th of October. That'll be me and Tate covering that. So do check that out. We've got a lot more content on the way. And as I've said many times in this video tonight, we obviously have done a lot of Bond stuff recently. So go check out our 4-hour spoiler discussion for those that just need to take it in. It's getting released in America tonight. A lot of discussion, very divisive. So if you need a bit of remedy, have a listen to 3 completely different people's takes on the film on that. So yeah, that's everything we can say. Charlie, thank you for coming on. I know you've took time out of the festival. You're literally in your office as well, not home. For those that do follow us, so it's
No
as we
posters
said,
here.
yeah, we couldn't not get you on for Dune. So thank you so much for coming on, and everybody
Pleasure.
at home, we'll be sure to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.